This episode is in partnership with Authority Magazine. Authority Magazine, a Medium publication, is devoted to sharing in-depth and interesting interviews featuring people who are authorities in business, pop culture, wellness, social impact, and tech.
It is time to talk about mental health, and today we are going to do just that.
Mental health is a subject filled with fear, denial, and all kinds of trauma for everyone involved.
Which is why today Pamela Harrington joins us from the organization Bring Change to Mind. Pamela, welcome to Believe in People.
Thank you. It's great to see you both.
Pamela, can you share a little bit about yourself and what brought you to the nonprofit organization Bring Change to Mind as executive director?
Sure. I have been in the nonprofit world for upwards of 30 years, which is a little remarkable. Time moves far too quickly. I've been in the mental health space for 24 years. I started politically, actually, trying to change the world in DC through being a Schedule C in a presidential race or in a presidential administration, and then quickly learned that I was not going to be able to influence and change policy and people's lives through politics. So I changed direction and went into the nonprofit field. I worked in the breast cancer awareness space for about 10 years, and I worked for an amazing woman who created the pink ribbon. And back in the 90s, when no one was talking about breast cancer, and we kind of started the first cause marketing campaign around the pink ribbon and trying to raise awareness and funds around breast cancer clinical and genetic research specifically. And I was approached by a family in New York City who had recently lost their son to mental illness. And at that time, this was again 25 years ago, no one was talking about mental illness. And they had seen the way the Pink Ribbon campaign caught on, and suddenly funding was coming towards breast cancer, and how media was taking it, time and space to put public service announcements out there. Suddenly everything changed. So I went to work for them, and I helped put, it was called the JED Foundation. It is the JED Foundation.
Oh, yeah.
I helped put JED Foundation together with the founding family. And it was pretty much crickets. People were not willing to talk about mental illness 25 years ago. 12 years ago, I came to Bring Change to Mind. And so I have been in this space and have seen a remarkable change. And when Calen Close founded this organization, the mighty actor and advocate Calen Close, and when she called and she said, I really respect the organizations that have been working in mental illness, and I want to lend my name and my platform and anything I can do to help amplify conversations and normalize conversations around mental illness. And I found that to be an incredible challenge, to take an idea, a very nascent organization that had really just a file box, and say, would you take this on and try to grow it? So I've been here 12 years and trying to normalize mental health conversations.
Well, a couple of things. One is Calen Close has a personal connection to mental health through a relation. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit about that. But then again, I also really wanted to ask you, you talk about the pink ribbon, for example, Movember, which is a men's prostate type of research and something that people are getting behind. But there's still a stigma when it comes to mental health. Tell us why. Tell us why.
When Glenn, as a public figure, you're often called upon to get behind various causes and campaigns. And when she spoke to her family, she was doing things for the environment. She was doing things for pet rescue, for dogs, for a number of different things. And she looked at what was very deep rooted in her family and what her family needed. And at the time, her sister had been undiagnosed with bipolar disorder at 50 years old, and her nephew, who at 18 was really, really having a lot of struggles personally and socially. And Glenn stepped in to try to help them get a proper diagnosis and treatment. And thankfully, Jessi got diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Calen got diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder in this very small Montana community that they lived in. When they came back from their treatment and their hospitalization, no one would talk to them. The stigma around having a diagnosis and having treatment and having been in a residential treatment was something that was looked at as frightening, as shameful, as something that you stay away from. Maybe it catches, maybe they're dangerous. So that was the first thing that really brought Glenn into this understanding that, 1 in 4 people is dealing with a mental illness, and they're likely not telling anyone, not asking for help, not getting treatment, feeling self-shame because of this very generational stigma that has been kind of passed down through all these older generations. You put it under the carpet, or you put that loved one in a place where they're not going to be disruptive.
Right, the
So
loony
it's,
bin.
yeah, I mean, those were terminologies that we all grew up with. And we lost a beautiful segment of society through difference. And so now, I mean, the stigma is still there. There are still pockets of cultural stigma. There are pockets in this country where, in rural communities, and in certain ethnic communities where you just don't talk about mental illness because it's thought of as a weakness.
Yeah. And also too, I mean, even the stigma around getting help in certain cultures and communities are just is frowned upon. And so that just adds to the challenges. But I find too, Pamela, and I absolutely appreciate the fact that you have to hone in and focus on a community or a group in order to grow. And is that then why, and I appreciate the fact too, that you're research based, so that all of your programs are research based. Is that why you started or are landing on youth, like high schools? You have 440 programs in schools, something of that nature. But what was the thinking around youth? Are they the ones to spread the social education around this?
We've learned when we started 14 years ago, Glenn called Ron Howard and put together a big public service announcement that we broadcast out and had billions of media impressions. And it was trying to focus on everyone. We want to talk about mental illness. We want to normalize mental illness. And then we had everyone in Grand Central Station with their diagnosis on a t-shirt. It's an amazing PSA. We still have it out there. What we learned, and when we brought a scientific advisory council on board, is that how are you really going to focus and change the attitudes and behaviors of certain populations? If you go broad-based, maybe it'll land on those that are in the choir, those that are actually open to the messaging. So we decided that we needed to focus. And so we started actually with a college demographic. We went to Indiana University in Bloomington, which is, 40,000 students on a campus, and started tracking an incoming freshman class over the course of their 4 years at the university, and had every kind of measure from, interventions and education and awareness with residents, advisors in the Greek system, athletics, and the wellness centers, from the top, from the president down to the student groups. It became a club. At the end of those 4 years, we published that research, and yes, it worked. Stigma was decreased across the campus. And then we just realized we have to go younger. By the time a student has gone off to college, it's great. There are preventive measures there. But if we can assist the students before, while they're at home with their families, and, obviously not everyone goes off to college or university. So if we can look at high school students, so 9.5 years ago, we started a pilot here in the Bay Area with UCSF and UC Berkeley, and measured with this peer-led, evidence-based high school club if we could change attitudes and behaviors amongst these 15 to 18-year-olds. Spent 2 years out in the field, pulled all the data in, published that research. It was working across urban, rural, high income, low income, charter, public, private, parochial. It was working. So we started rolling that out. We're in 42 states now, have put over 100,000 teenagers through this high school program. And now we're looking at middle school, because after pandemic and isolation and everything that's happening in our world right now, we know we have to go younger again.
Well, you sort of have taken the next question right out of my mouth here. First of all, I want to say that I hope we can put a couple of your public service announcements, tag them on to the podcast at the end, because they really are brilliant. And I did find one quite interesting where Calen Close, the bunny boiler,
Yes.
is involved in one of the PSAs where it's like psycho, 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 and then I guess it's her nephew that comes on and says, you know, look at me, I'm not a psycho. I do have mental illness, but you know, what have you. But I was going to ask, look, we have two wars going on that are on the front page every day and on the news every day. Both of them I personally find very upsetting, and they affect me every day as I go about my life, trying to interact and trying to be kind and open with people. As you mentioned, we had the pandemic, but the pandemic hasn't gone away. We've just had an uptick, especially with, you know, people traveling over the holidays and sorts of things. So, I mean, all this stuff is floating around out there. The counseling that you're doing is obviously helping, as you've just told us. But it seems to me like anxiety levels. Now we have an election coming up this fall, and we all know what's going on with regards to the characters involved in that. And I mean, there must be more need now than perhaps ever for these types of programs. How do you walk a kid through coping with this kind of stuff?
Yes to all.
Sorry, it was a hell of a question. Anyway.
You know, we have never seen as much need. All of us adults that have been able to see, you know, the light at the end of the tunnel. We know that things correct over time. We've built up hopefully some resilience over, you know, the course of our lives. We have a bit more perspective. When you look at some of the teens, they have a very, very different attitude. Everything coming at them, and you know, the noise, it's constant. You mentioned the wars and the pandemic, and I would say that in dealing with many of the kids that we work with, this climate anxiety and eco anxiety, and I mean, there are so many reasons for them to say, why bother getting good grades and going to university, because there are not going to be jobs out there anyway. AI is going to replace everything. So, I mean, there is not a segment of their life that is, you know, that might look optimistic. But I think when you bring it all back, and let me just say that we don't do counseling. This is a peer-led club. So it is a space where they can connect. I think that it's that human connection and that empathy and that compassion that kids don't always have the opportunity to get that in person, to read each other's body language. And you know, between having masks and being on social, and you know, that crick in their neck that they have from always looking at a phone, bringing students together and giving them an opportunity to pull others in, and they sit together at a lunch, you know, every week, and the clubs are open to everyone. I think that is this kind of missing thing in all of our lives as we sit here on a Zoom ourselves. You know, I think that personal connection is really something that is going to help them to build those sensibilities that they need to have a positive outlook on things. And that might sound very, very simplistic, but that's, it's kind of that first step of understanding one another, understanding yourself, understanding resilience, understanding the way your brain works, understanding what mental health is, what it is not. All of these things put together just build these really strong, empowered, mighty young advocates that go out and help their friends and push up to their teachers. And then they bring some of these things home and, teach their siblings, older generations in their family. They tell their parents, what terms they should or should not say. It's really giving these students the opportunity to build something themselves, and then all of us step back. This is peer-led, teen-led. We just give them all the tools and we empower them to go. And I think that too many parents, probably myself included, we snowplowed. We took care of all of the things that might have gotten in the way of our students and our kids and growing. And the kids need that sense of independence and responsibility and empowerment to build things themselves, take care of things themselves. And this is what these clubs are doing across the country.
And Pamela, how does it, so I imagine just like changing a corporate culture, where it takes years, as a matter of fact, but it always leads to the top buy-in to ensure that the people are adopting new ways of doing things and respect and empathy and compassion. So for instance, you go into a school, okay, and how then do you communicate with the school to say, we'd like to start a group. It's bring change to mind, and it's going to meet once a week. And then what does that look like? Do you submit information to people? How do they join? Then how does it then disseminate out into their own community within the school?
Well, first of all, the kids come to us. They
Oh,
find
wow.
us. Yeah. So this is not a top down.
Oh, okay.
This is a youth-led movement. So a student will do their online search. What is an evidence-based club? They know enough that if they're going to introduce something to their school, that they better say evidence-based.
Right.
So they find us. We're one of the very few national evidence-based high school clubs. They submit an application. They tell us why they want a Bring Change to Mind club. And then we ask them to find a faculty advisor. That's going to be their club advisor. So it's like a Spanish club, a UN club, anything like that. They identify some student leadership. They sign a term of agreement. And then we have, this is a very high touch model. This is a sensitive subject. So we have one staff member for every 55 schools. So our staff person is helping the students in, coming up with the activities that they're going to do on their school campus, helping the faculty advisor. We give them a $500 stipend, and then they have access to our portal that has every kind of discussion topic, linked to movies. We have Headspace meditation app that they oftentimes start their club meetings with a meditation. They have activities, they have budget lines, they have talking points, they have press kits, everything in there. So they can pick and choose. If they're in an inner city community where homelessness and food insecurity is an issue, they can go down through the portal and find out this is a conversation that's going to be really relevant to my peers. If they're in a rural community in Indiana and it's, something around politics in red state, they can go there. So it's
Or farm suicide.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done several stories on farm suicide, which is something people in cities don't realize goes on day in, day out.
Yeah.
So these kids contact you. Is
Yeah.
that an indication that there is a need?
Oh gosh, yes. We have a waiting list at all times, times. And it's only gated that, we could have thousands and thousands of schools right now, but we want to keep the integrity of the program and make sure that it's high touch. So unless we can hire more people to oversee the clubs, I can't bring these more clubs on. And oftentimes the letters from these students, I mean, there's been a loss or multiple losses of life on their campus. And the administration is in a panic. The parents are fearful. no one knows how to talk about it.
No, I
And the
mean,
kids
my
just
good,
need a place themselves.
we haven't even spoken about school shootings, which
And
is,
shootings. Yeah.
I mean, which,
Wow, yeah.
there are debates going on here in Chicago where I'm sitting about, whether to still have police officers inside the schools. And the fact, I come from a different era. The fact that you would even consider having a cop in your school
Yeah.
is something that's complete anathema to me. But these are the things that
Reality.
these kids are confronting.
Mhm.
So
Wow.
no wonder they need you.
Exactly. Pamela, where do you rely on your funding?
Uh, we have been doing one event a year. Um, and that's probably how you heard about us. I'm not sure. We have one big event that goes between New York City and San Francisco.
Yes.
And we award the Robin Williams Legacy of Laughter Award each year. This past year, we honored Ryan Reynolds with the Legacy of Laughter Award. And Robin's children, his son Zach is the chairman of our board. So we do the one big event. We have a couple of corporate sponsors. We are trying to bang on the doors of every state and federal funder that I keep hearing that there's so much money that's being released for mental health, and I have yet to see any of it hit the ground. So I don't know where that is. And over the past 14 years, we have had these very loyal donors that give us $10 a month. They come online, they've seen a PSA,
That's great.
and it's been a real humble. We're a small group. We don't do marketing. We don't do PR. We don't market this program. The kids find us. It's been a small and mighty labor of love for everyone involved in this. I will say this year, I want this to be our year of brag. And I was always told, never be a braggadocious kind of person. But I want this to be our year of brag because there are so many incredible, impactful things happening in this organization. And I don't know why everyone doesn't know about us.
Well, hopefully, a million more after this podcast are, going to be banging on your door. Each week, we ask the same question to our esteemed guest. Despite all the negatives that we've talked about, and despite the challenges that young people are going through, and you are out there trying to assist in whatever way you can, why do you still believe in people?
I, well, I'm an empath. I I see I see so much hope in this younger generation. I'm a little fearful about the older generations. Sitting up watching New Hampshire last night. Um, I believe in these kids. They never fail to inspire me every single day. The things that they come up with, the they are so empowered. They're not going to look at a system as it stands right now and say, let's just go and try to tinker with it and change it. They just want to blow it up and do something right, start from scratch. And, I believe in so many of the systems that we have out there are broken. The mental health and policy and insurance, all of that is rather broken. But if we can take and empower this younger generation, get them into mental health career paths, and so many of our kids want to go into behavioral health career paths,
Yeah.
everything's going to change. So I believe in these kids. I don't believe in everyone. I certainly don't. But I believe in the kids that we work with every single day and the incredible staff that we have and our board and all of the volunteers that help to help just really invest in our future. I think it's worth it.
That's really what it is, investing in our future, and bringing change to mind is exactly what you're doing. You're amplifying hope. And thank you for that. And we absolutely believe in you.
Well, thank you. I hope all of
Thanks.
your listeners believe in this too. And we
Thank you
would
so much.
welcome a million people knocking on our door with $1 in their hands. That would be great.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much for an insightful half an hour. I feel a little hopeful, more hopeful myself after having met you today. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Pamela.
you.
Appreciate it.
Really appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
I think it's interesting, Kev, because kids go to the organization rather than the organization going to them. So they've already defined that they need something, and there is a resource in which to help them. So it is really it is a collaborative experience that they're trying to share, and that's
And-
incredible.
And the challenges, I mean, in my view, as an old guy, seeing the challenges that young people are facing today, I think it's wonderful that there is a group out there that is allowing them to explore mental health issues among themselves with their friends, take it home to their family, and perhaps get rid of some of these stigmas that we've all grown up with and obviously still exist. If you want to discover more inspirational discussion, then subscribe to our podcast, Believe in People, and we'll see you again next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Walking like a one-man army, fighting with the shadows in your head, living out the same old moment, knowing you'd be better off instead if you could only say what you need to say what you need to say.
1 in 6 adults has a mental illness.
And we face a stigma that can be as painful as the disease itself.
Change a mind about mental illness, and you can change a life.
Say what you need to